My name's Georgina Green, and I am here to help you to turn GCSE stress into exam success. And today I'm going to answer a question that every student has, maybe doesn't actually know that they have. But when I work with students one-to-one, it's one of the first things that we do together, and it really makes a difference to the success of their revision, or them doing revision in the first place, to be fair. So what we're going to talk about is, how do you actually plan your revision session? What are you going to do in that time that you've set aside? It's one thing having a revision schedule, but what are you actually going to do with that time that's going to make a big difference? And ultimately, we'd like it to be as quick as possible. I mean, I love learning, and it's entirely possible that a lot of you also love learning, but we don't want to spend all day, especially after a school day, in front of books. So how can we make it effective, efficient, and not overwhelming? And while we're here, let me just introduce you to the guest cat for the day, Zed. Zed's staying for the week, so he's also participating in the video today. So step one is, what are you going to revise? Well, it might seem a bit obvious, but if you've set aside time for maths revision, you don't want to get to the maths revision time and just sit there with your maths textbook and think, what should I look at now? And a lot of the time, I'll find students will pick something that they're actually really comfortable with because they want to do that. Fair enough, that's just natural human behaviour, but we want to make sure that we're identifying the things that we actually need the time on. So I use this exciting process with my students. Your teachers quite often will give you red, amber, green assessments, especially if you've done your mocks. They'll give you an idea of what content you need to practice. Rather than red, amber, green, the RAG assessments. I like this. Who doesn't understand emojis? Look at him making himself comfortable back there. You're having a lovely time. Imagine, he never has to do this. Anyway, because we're not cats, the stuff that's a yeah is, you've got this. You're fine with that. Oh yeah? You fine with that, Zed? There he is. We agree. The stuff where you need more practice is the stuff that you know the process, but you don't necessarily recall it when you need to. And I need help with this is the stuff where you would want to reach out to your teacher or to a tutor and say, I need someone to explain this to me in a different way, or I think like I've misunderstood this. I don't think it's quite right the way that I'm doing it. That sort of thing is where you would want to reach out for help. So you probably have a list of the content that you have to study from your teacher, and if you don't, you can get it from your exam board spec, and you can go through and say, what are the things that you need practice or help with? And that's where you start your revision from. Literally just start from the top of the list and say, I need to practice this one, that's what I'm going to do today. You can do that ahead of time. You can go through that checklist process just once, and then always use that to help you pick what you're going to study each time. Next thing you need is the resources that you're going to use to revise. And that might be just your school textbook or your exercise book where you've written your notes. But there's loads of other things that you can use for your revision resources. I would recommend, though, you don't do what is very easy to do and just kind of dive into exploring and planning and not using. I've put some icons for stuff that I know that my students use regularly on the page here. You might recognize some of them. You can find resources like that quite easily, and all of these have got free content for you to use on them. You can use those to kind of supplement your notes and also to kind of test yourself. But essentially, we want to make sure that we've got content that we can use for our revision that's going to be relevant. This is one reason why it's a good idea to make sure that you keep on top of the notes that you make in class. So you can't always make complete notes in the moment in class. So it's good to spend some time afterwards just making sure that what you've written down is clear and it's going to make sense to you in the future. And if something that you've written down doesn't mean anything to you, that's a good point to go and ask the teacher, because they'll also remember what they meant by that at that point also. We need to have an actual activity when we're revising. We can't just watch a YouTube video and say we're done. We can't just read our notes and that's it. There has to be something that we're actively doing with that information. Our brain is like anything else. If we don't give it any work to do, it's not doing any work. It'll go and do something else. So you can't be looking at something and think that your brain's using it. Unfortunately, you have to actually make it do something with that information, like answer questions, turn it into a mind map, create a poster, table of information, list of key terms. Anything like that is actually having to read and understand the information, absorb it into your memory, process it for some output, and then create that output. That's even if it's not the same as exam questions, it's processing that information in a way that it's building the memory connections and sorting it all logically so that you're actually going to be able to remember it in the future. So the process might be as straightforward as, I'm going to watch this YouTube video, I'm going to summarise the content of the YouTube video onto a page of notes or some record cards. I'm then going to use that information to answer 10 practice questions that I've downloaded from Maths Made Easy or Quizlet, and then I'm going to mark my work. It doesn't have to be a massively complicated process. It doesn't have to involve extreme artistic creativity. It just has to involve you doing something with the work. Definitely a good time to play to your strengths and interests. If you like creative work, if you like being artistic, turning something into a poster, especially if you're going to stick it onto your wall, is a fantastic thing to do. Definitely recommend. If you're not a fan of that, you could just turn it into a table or a mind map. You don't have to be artistic. It doesn't have to look nice. You don't even have to ever look at it again. The process of making it is active learning. Don't get mad about this one. We have to build assessment in so that we know that this is working. It's also good practice for the assessments that we're preparing for, unfortunately. And it's also going to help with any anxiety you might feel around assessment to just build it into your regular revision practice. That doesn't mean sitting an exam every time, just that there's some element of assessing that the process you followed has actually led you to understand the content and you can pass assessment questions. Bear with me, it's not painful. And nobody is ever going to look at it. It's just for you to make sure that you understand. I'd recommend that when you're doing it, that you're also marking it. So if you're using exam questions, look at the mark scheme and assess yourself that way. That's really helpful to get to grips with how mark schemes work and what sort of content you need to be able to put into your answers to meet the question requirements, understanding command words like discuss, explain, justify, things like that. And it's also just really helpful for you to see where you are with a specific topic. And again, we're not going for 100%, so it doesn't matter if you haven't got everything correct. Just making sure that you're around your target area with that content is a good place to be. Build in some level of assessment, just quiz yourself, answer some practice questions, download something from Save My Exams, Maths Made Easy or something like that, just to make sure you're where you need to be. We're at the final step. Last up, review. So we need to review that what we're doing is working. That can be a weekly process for all of your revision sessions, but it's helpful to include reflection in everything that you're doing in your learning process. So do I feel like every element of this session went well? After you finished, were the resources good? Was the activity effective for me? How did the assessment go? Do I feel comfortable with this topic? Can I update my checklist and make this one a yeah? Or is it nah and I need to ask somebody for help? And at the end of the week, you can do that review for all of them and just say, do I feel like I remember this content now? Or do I need to schedule another review session in, another revision session in for that same topic? Do I need to go and ask somebody for help? Do I need to reach out for the help of a tutor? Can I do this with my friend who's actually really good at this subject and I can help them with that subject instead? That sort of thing. Having that review process and that reflection on what you do well and what you need help with is one of the most powerful elements of revision that people don't necessarily include in the process. So make sure that you're making some time for doing that each week as well. Give that a go for your revision in this coming week. Let me know how you get on. If you found this really useful, like the video, share it with one of your friends, and subscribe to the channel for future updates.